R. Kelly has been found guilty. Politicians are playing at being architects, and Zweli Mkhize's son is dressing his lambs in Louis Vuitton scarves. The news this week has been wild, but we're here to help you make sense of it all.
Welcome to The Wrap, your weekly update of empowering and easy to understand news brought to you by Verashni Pillay and the explain.co.za team. Our take.
R. Kelly, you're cancelled forever. History will not remember R. Kelly as an award-winning R&B singer, but as the sex pest and sexual predator he really is. On Monday, a New York court found Kelly guilty on 8 counts of sex trafficking and sexual abuse, and 1 count of racketeering. Sentencing will happen in May, and the 54-year-old could face up to decades in prison. This is a long-awaited moment of justice for all the men and women he sexually abused over 20 years. In the 1990s, Kelly's sexually predatory behavior towards minors first came under the spotlight when he secretly married late singer Aaliyah. She was just 15 years at the time. Kelly was 27 and had obtained illegal paperwork to change Aaliyah's age. In the years that followed, Kelly was sued by at least 4 women for sexual harassment and forcing them into sexual relations with him, despite being underaged. Over the years, new allegations were leveled against Kelly for abuse, sexual exploitation, and for making sex videos and taking pictures of minors and circulating the content without consent. Most of the allegations were first heard in a 2019 documentary called Surviving R. Kelly, where his victims spoke out about how he controlled and abused them sexually and emotionally. He was then charged with sex trafficking. Now, Kelly's racketeering charge relates to the illegal scheme he was running with the help of his so-called inner circle across states to recruit or kidnap young and vulnerable women, sometimes at his concerts, to sexually exploit and to produce pornography. The 9 women and 2 men who testified in court over a 6-week-long trial said they could now live free from fear and start their healing process. Look, it's a difficult story to read about, we know, but take heart. For generations, abusers in high places have gotten away with these crimes. The cultural shift brought about by the Me Too movement and other activism is slowly starting to change that.
The big story.
Ramaphosa finally releases the SIU findings on Digital Vibes. Remember that dodgy Digital Vibes contract? Former Health Minister Zweli Mkhize was forced to step down in August over an uproar that his close associates had bagged a 150 million rand communications contract. It put President Cyril Ramaphosa under pressure, and he put government's special investigation unit on the case, albeit reluctantly, as Mkhize was a respected health minister guiding South Africa through choppy COVID waters, plus a Ramaphosa ally. So, what did the SIU find out? Well, we didn't know. Ramaphosa sat on the report for 3 months after it was released. This week, he finally authorized the release of the investigation, and the results are damning. The SIU hints that Mkhize may have lied to them in the investigation, and that he definitely misled the public with regards to this whole contract. Mkhize was, in fact, closely involved in improperly authorizing the contract to Digital Vibes at more than double the price of a rival bidder, the report finds. Digital Vibes is controlled by Mkhize's family friends Tahira Mather and Nadira Mitha. The report confirms journalism reports that Mkhize and his family cashed in from the deal. His son Dedani received at least 3.8 million rand. In one of our most WTF moments from this entire saga, Daily Maverick's Peter Louis Myberg reported that some of this money was used to buy Louis Vuitton scarves for a lamb on Dedani's farms. All puns about Dedani having a little lamb are totally welcome at this point. So what happens next? The SIU acts like the police within the justice system process when it comes to a high-profile case involving any government money being improperly spent. Their recommendations, similar to a police investigation, will then get referred to the National Prosecuting Authority, the NPA, who must then go before a judge and prove the case. And then we get to the good accountability stuff in terms of actual penalties like jail time and so on. Mkhize, his family, Mather and Mitha could face money laundering and related charges in a criminal court based on the recommendations of this report. The report also recommends that the acting DG in the health department, and that's Dr. Verashni Pillay, face criminal charges of financial misconduct and fraud. He's particularly fingered for being one of the key players in allowing this dodgy contract to go through. But we don't have to wait for this whole process of court and everything to see some action. The health department can and probably will act sooner on SIU report recommendations to discipline the top officials who award the tender. So all in all, a pretty good day for accountability, even if it did take our president an age to allow the process to unfold. And don't get us started on how he still keeps defending Mkhize, saying this past week that he served his nation well. Read the room, Cyril.
The briefs.
A safer alternative to Uber? Have you noticed a lot of e-hailing ads around you lately? That's because there's a new entrant to the South African scene, Didi. Didi, which was founded in China in 2012, is putting Uber and Bolt in the backseat, haha, mostly because of its top-notch security features. These include a recording monitor to check for any unusual activity during trips, a facial recognition system for Didi drivers, SOS buttons for both drivers and riders, 24/7 safety hotlines, and the fact that both rider and the driver can preview each other's history before accepting the trip. This all sounds pretty good to us, given some of the concerns we've heard about dangerous trips on other competitors. Now, Didi became available to South African users in Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, and Pretoria, so those are the three big metros in Gauteng, from August 23rd. This followed successful launches in Cape Town and Gqeberha earlier this year. If you want to try it out, you could download it on your app store. Now, we're really excited about them, but we think the real test will be how Didi treats their drivers, because there's also been some concerns about how their competitors did in that regard. We'll be watching and we'll let you know. Are politicians frustrated spatial planners at heart? We're tempted to think so following their recent election campaigning. The DA in Cape Town wants to turn the estate that houses parliamentarians into low-cost housing. It sends all the right signals. Housing the 400 MPs costs almost 70 million rand per year. That could house a lot of low-income people. But we can't take the DA seriously on this, as the party in Cape Town is notorious for ousting poor people in the city in favour of pricey property developments, like the Bromwell Street evictions, which you can read about on Ground Up. Guys, start with the Boer carp issues on your own doorstep, which is a whole other issue in that city. Now, DA mayoral hopeful Jordan Hill-Lewis got into a spat with Minister of Public Works Patricia de Lille over the issue, where she hilariously called him, and I quote here, stupid. Now, de Lille is a former DA Cape Town mayor herself, before she, of course, fell out with the party, and she's claiming that her party, which is called Good, will release well-located city-owned land to deliver affordable accommodation. But given that many of the aforementioned issues happened during her tenure as mayor, we're not convinced that she would do much differently as leader of Good if she was elected. Now, Gayton Mackenzie's Patriotic Alliance also got in on the action, proposing that Cape Town Stadium and golf courses be demolished for affordable housing. It seems like everyone is looking for outlandish ideas. But it was Julius Malema's suggestion that he and the EFF would build RDP houses in areas like Sandton that got the most attention. Some critics cheekily asked whether he would start on his own street in the affluent suburb of Sandton. Now, we think Malema is being pretty shallow in his analysis. Of course, people of all incomes should live in main business nodes like Sandton. The legacy of apartheid spatial planning, which forced working-class black South Africans into far-flung areas, means that workers pay more than most countries to get to work till today. The solution is not space-hungry RDP houses, but rather smart solutions around mixed-use developments and densification. There are loads of great solutions already being trialled in South Africa and elsewhere, and we need more like that here. In the city of Johannesburg, for example, former Mayor Herman Mashaba initiated a project which saw derelict and hijacked buildings expropriated for public use in the form of subsidized housing. Now, this issue of creating affordable housing in affluent business areas is not specific to South Africa. Recently, voters in Berlin, Germany, voted to expropriate property owned by large real estate companies for affordable housing in the city. Calling for RDP houses was just old Gigi's way of hogging the headlines, and it looks like it worked. South Africa has officially exited the third wave of COVID-19 infections, the National Institute of Communicable Diseases announced on Sunday. New cases averaged around 2,000 a day in the last week. Now, that's a huge decline compared to the 9,000 a day average at the beginning of the last month. We're also super happy to see vaccinations going smoothly, but it's still pretty slow. The department was hoping to vaccinate 41 million people by the end of the year. That would have been 67% of the population and would have helped us reach herd immunity. But so far, only 17 million doses have been administered. What's going on? There's a sufficient supply, but South Africans just are not turning up. Keep encouraging your people to get vaxxed, guys. Now, there are talks of a move to lockdown level 1 soon with the infections falling like this. This could mean a shorter curfew, alcohol will be on sale on Saturdays for off-site consumption, and the reopening of more leisure activities. But be warned, scientists say the fourth wave could start creeping up on us from November. The way we see it, make the most of October.
Adulting.
Becoming a blood donor. The South African National Bank Services is facing a blood shortage and it needs your help. Fewer than 1% of South Africans are reportedly active blood donors. Donation must be discarded after 42 days, and without regular blood donation, supplies have been running low since December. That was ahead of the festive season, a time when officials always urgently need stock because of high accident rates. So, if you want to help, you can qualify to become a donor by being between the ages of 16 and 75 years old. You'd need to weigh 50 kgs or more, be in good health, lead a healthy lifestyle, and commit to donating blood regularly. To get more information on where you can go to donate, visit sanbs.org.za or call 0800 11 9031. A strong pair of hands needed for our Constitutional Court. The Pretoria High Court has granted the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into State Capture another 3-month extension. That's its 5th extension to date. Now look, the hearings are all done. You're not going to hear any more testimony coming through on your radio news. But the extension is for Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo and his team to write their report on state capture under Jacob Zuma. By the end of last year, the Commission had interviewed nearly 300 witnesses and collected 1 billion gigabytes of evidence. That's a lot of homework. The Commission now has until the 31st of December this year to hand in its report to President Cyril Ramaphosa, much to Justice Minister Ronald Lamola's annoyance. He was against the extension, and he even asked the High Court to cap any future costs of the Commission to 15 million rand. The Commission has cost us about 1 billion rand so far. Given that state capture under Zuma cost South Africa anything from 500 billion rand to 1 trillion rand, and that's direct and indirect costs, we think the money was well spent, but it really does need to wrap up now. It's been a few years, guys. In fact, Raymond Zondo himself has come under fire for not running things more efficiently from many people. It's why he probably won't make the cut for the all-important role of Chief Justice, despite the fact that he's Deputy Chief Justice, and that person usually gets the job. Now, the job does need to be filled pronto. There's a lot of concerns about the state of our top court. It has a couple of vacancies, and current Chief Justice Mkheng's tenure ends on the 11th of October. That's a few days away, guys. But Mkheng has already effectively finished his term by going on long leave, and he leaves a mixed and often controversial legacy behind him. The court is struggling with a heavy caseload, a shortage of justices, and it did not cover itself with glory in how long it took to give reasons on their election day judgment, which ended up dividing political parties. It needs to be better run too on the administrative front. Excitingly, Ramaphosa, who is in charge of making the appointment, has invited public nominations for the position last month. This kind of transparency is a first. There are some strong candidates in the running, according to the Mail and Guardian, including possibly the first female Chief Justice. Our top court has saved South Africa time and time again. It needs to be in excellent hands. A shout out to US President Joe Biden for offering to double the number of Pfizer vaccines that his country is donating to developing nations. This brings the total to 1 billion vaccines. This is by far the largest donation any country in the world has pledged, and it's about time. Vaccine hoarding by first world countries while developing nations struggle to access stock is, to put it mildly, disgusting. Biden is seeking to expand and accelerate global vaccination efforts and has pleaded with other leaders to help low and middle income nations vaccinate at least 70% of their populations by September 2022. For every 1 shot we've administered to date in America, we have now committed to do 3 shots to the rest of the world, said Biden. Now, this initiative will be run via COVAX. That's the innovative vaccine sharing agreement that got us excited at the start of the pandemic, but has been hamstrung because many richer nations have refused to play fair. We're glad to see even a slow shift towards vaccine equity. And we're not the only ones. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has described rich nations hoarding as a moral indictment of the state of our world and an obscenity. Speaking of tech in China, there have been some dramatic recent shifts on that country's tech scene. Chinese authorities have cracked down on tech giants within their countries with a slew of new regulations. It's a mixed bag. Regulators are taking aim at unhealthy monopolies and trying to protect society from the potentially disastrous effects of social media on privacy, mental health, and more. But some regulations risk stifling innovation, as Alibaba co-founder Jack Ma noted last October, and they give the governing Chinese Communist Party greater control. However, it is kind of great that China can crack down on unhealthy behavior by tech giants. The West is struggling to do the same, and in some ways it feels like it's the Wild West out there. The Wall Street Journal recently ran a shocking series of exposés into Facebook's dodgy practices, which includes excluding celebrities and influential figures from content moderation rules and hiding research that shows the harmful effects Instagram, which it owns, has on young users. Now, Chinese tech giants Tencent and Alibaba have agreed to a government proposal that aims to narrow the country's wealth gap and give small and medium-sized tech businesses the chance to enter the market. We're here for that kind of action. And in our final brief this week, South Africa took an important step towards meeting its green energy goals this week. International climate envoys, which are basically high-powered policymakers on climate change, have been in the country to discuss financing options that will allow us to retire our coal plants entirely and really kickstart the green energy project. This is just ahead of the UN Climate Change Conference, otherwise known as COP, on the 31st of October in Glasgow, Scotland. Now, Eskom has put this plan on the table, and they're looking for about 180 billion rand in concessional finance so that its coal-fired plants can go ahead into early retirement. They've also proposed a just transition financing facility to make the whole green energy process more affordable and financially sustainable, and particularly to protect vulnerable workers. A just transition specifically refers to the fact that you would shield workers and communities that are reliant on fossil fuels like mining to ensure that they still have jobs going forward. This all sounds really good, but we couldn't help but notice that Mineral Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe wasn't on hand to welcome the envoys. Several of his fellow ministers, among them Ibrahim Patel, Pravin Gordhan and Barbara Creecy, were there to roll out the red carpet, but where was Mantashe? We're also wondering why he's still punting coal, even as his colleagues get behind clean energy. South Africa is one of the world's top emitters of greenhouse gases. It's crucial that we get on board with a global swing to sustainable energy sources or risk being left out of the global economy. Mantashe needs to come to the green, sensible, sustainable party. Now, the US's Deputy Special Envoy for Climate, Jonathan Pershing, who was among the visitors to South Africa, will also head to Senegal, Namibia and the DRC to advance the use of green energy. Meanwhile, Reuters reports that Pershing's boss, John Kerry, has praised China after its president, Xi Jinping, told the United Nations that Beijing would no longer build new coal-fired power plants around the world as part of global efforts to combat climate change.
That's it from us at The Wrap, an award-winning product of Explain.co.za, simple news summaries for busy people. The Wrap is sponsored by Explain's agency division. We specialize in content marketing for purpose-driven organizations, often with a pan-African reach. Mail info@explain.co.za for a quote. Remember to share the love, tell your friends to sign up for updates at explain.co.za/subscribe. Till next time, goodbye from the team.